have been assigned an assignment to do a research on race in different sociological perspectives. Basically, we are here to draw our understanding of race from three prominent sociological perspectives, which are the conflict theory, which was funded by Karl Marx, and symbolic insurrectionism, conflict theory, which was pioneered by Karl Marx, symbolic insurrectionism, which was founded by George Herbert, and the functionalist theory, which was based on the work of Henry Spinker and other theorists. As a group, we are going to discuss our understanding of the three different theories on race. And secondly, we will link these theories with classroom context in such a way that how can these three theories be used to create a social just classroom.
I believe that in order to understand what sociology says about race, we have to first understand race. Race, it is well defined as the category based on real and the perceived biological differences between the group of people. Let us look on what the conflict theory says about race. The conflict theory, or the Marxism, is the sociologist theory that opposes the argument put forward by the functionalist. It is based on the Karl Marx work, where he begins to argue that different social groups in the society are competing with the scarce of resources and power that results into conflict. The conflict theory views race as two different social groups, where we have the dominant group and the subordinate group. The dominant group are the ones who control resources, money, and power, while the subordinate groups have to perform the labors for the group in power. The superior dominant group keeps the profit, and while the inferior subordinate group has to live with the minimum wage. As you can see in this picture, we have the subordinate group who are gifting the lives of the group in power, which is
adding to what Bongani has been saying, conflict theory on race is a point of view that focuses on inequality and conflicts between people of different racial and ethnic groups of people. According to the theorists, the conflict theory sees the purpose of education as maintaining and preserving the power of those who dominate society. They see the education system as perpetuating the status quo by dulling the lower classes, particularly the proletarians, into being the obedient workers. As you can see here, this is a scale showing the differences. The scale is not balanced because the working class, which is the proletarians, are working for the gains of the bourgeoisie. Okay, moreover, the theory stresses on that when individuals have more power compared to others, they are likely to use this power to exploit individuals or group with less power. Additionally, this theory was created by the German sociologist and activist Karl Marx, who is also perceived to be the father of the communism. Marx believes that society always has two groups, and that is the oppressors and the oppressed. Whenever one group rose to power, a different group lost power. As you can see in this scale that I've shown you before, it results in conflict because all ethnic groups in a society are all fighting over the scarce resources. When I say scarce resources, I'm not talking about tangible resources such as wood, but it can also be power and time, and so on. Getting straight to the point, Karl Marx was aware that most of the people living in a capitalist society did not see how the system shaped the entire operation of the society. Just as more than individuals see private property which belongs to those people who are wealthy, mostly the white class in South Africa, as natural. Many of the members in a capitalist society see the rich, e.g. white Africans, as having earned their wealth through hard work and education, while seeing the poor individuals or groups of the proletarians as lacking the skills and initiative. Marx rejected this type of thinking and termed it as false conscience, yes. Okay, when I talk about fault consciousness, Karl Marx is talking about the explanation of social problems of individual rather than the flaws of society. Marx wanted to replace this kind of thinking with something called class consciousness. This means that Marx wanted the proletariat to rise against the capitalists and overthrow the capitalist system. As you can see here, this picture. Here, people are protesting. This is the result of the conflict theory. People they tend to cause revolt and conquest because they disagree with the issue of class. To mitigate the situations, in order to create a socially just classroom that promotes education for all, there should be the redistribution of resources such as adequate study materials, e.g. books and computers from the rich to the poor government school to maintain equality for all. And in this way, this is the way of making the proletariat or the poor government schools to be a better off, because if wealth is unevenly distributed in a society, wealthy people end up in control of many aspects of the lives of those who are citizens of a country. When I talk about equal distribution of resources, I mean this picture shows that every learner, if you can see, every learner is carrying a book, which means every person in school must have their own books or resources in order to be equal with the white ones or the rich class or the middle class. Thank you.
In order for us to eradicate this conflict within a classroom of race, we need to put in mind that there must be an equal distribution of resources. Reflecting back in my schooling experience, in our school we did not have a playing ground, we did not have swimming pools where we do swimming pool lessons and stuff. But now if you look at this picture of a dominant race, now children are playing hockey, and if you look at this picture of an inferior race, people are playing on the dirty playground, there's mud, there's dust, and all this. So there must be that distribution of equal resources. Even in schools, there must be a distribution of resources such as books, so that learners can be able to read books, or even in the distribution of books, it must be equal into all schools, even in the white schools and black schools. This thing of race, and I'll put it even in the classroom, race must be eradicated. Learners must be treated fair. The distribution of resources must be equal from school to school, modesty schools and even public schools, so that learners can be able to have a book that's so that this can enable learners to have books to use when they're at home. Because mostly what's happening in public schools, learners, they share books in three. So this causes problems within the school structure. And this thing of race should be eradicated so that everyone can live and learn in a safe and better environment where they learn from different races, so that in the future the rainbow nation can be achieved.
For everyone to understand what symbolic interactionism theory is. So symbolic interactionism theory is a micro-level theory that focuses on relationship among individuals within a society. It is based on communication or interaction, which involves the exchange of meanings through language and symbols. Basically, it is believed to be the way in which people make sense of their social world. Hence, according to symbolic interactionist perspective, we act towards people and things based on the meanings we interpret from them. So those meanings are the product of social interaction between people.
Greetings to you all. Firstly, symbolic insertion theory is one of the most important contributions to the sociological perspective. This approach to studying the social world is outlined by Herbert Blumer in his book of Symbolic Intersectionism. Symbolic intersectionism sees education as one way in which that labeling theory is seen in action. A symbolic intersectionist might say that this labeling has a direct correlation to those who are in power and those who are labeled. For example, low standardized test scores or poor performance in a particular class often leads to a student who is labeled as low achievers. Such labels are difficult to shake off, which can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, for example, a primary teacher, school teacher, was accused of separating children according to race. Elsewhere, in high school, there was accused of progressing white pupils who failed while holding back black pupils who had failed. There have been numerous stories such as the separate language policies and instances of schools turning away largely black pupils claiming their classrooms are full. Okay. Racism is any attitude or behavior that assumes someone is inferior because of their skin color or race. Okay. Racism in schools also can directly or indirectly exclude learners from accusing services or taking part in education. Sports and social activities. This can also occur in a systematic or institutional level through policies, conditions, or practice that disadvantage certain groups which are blacks. Then, for a teacher to create a social justice classroom, a teacher, like when a teacher creates a sitting plan, a teacher should mix both groups, like mixes whites and blacks learners. Also in school, in sports, like as you can see in that picture, there are learners who are playing rugby. This picture. There are learners who are playing rugby. As we all know, that rugby was once the sport for only one.
Symbolic interactionist look on race. I think we firstly need to understand the symbolic interaction itself. So we're going to touch on some underlying premises of symbolic interactionism. Okay, firstly, they believe that reality is not an objective phenomenon. So it means that reality is not something that existed there without our own consciousness or our own communion with it. So again, they do believe that around the symbols that are around us, so we attach meaning on those symbols. And on those symbols, those meanings are fostered by our social interaction, which of course includes our background and experiences. Okay, so according to social symbolic interactionists, so they look at race as something that we attach meaning to, okay, that's first. And again, they look at race as something that is not an objective phenomenon, okay. So something that is subjective and something that we create socially through our interaction. So since our experiences and backgrounds are different, so that means, again, the way in which we look at race will be different from different places, okay. For an example, being black or being white from one place might be different from one place, okay. So especially from those places that are from colonialism, so where racism is an issue. So color is just a significant term there. So in those areas, okay, looking at this picture, okay, what you have there, you have a van or a car. Then it is full of workers. And these workers are loaded on the parking. So this is what we normally see in most of farmers. So farmers, the meaning they attach to race, it is in a way that from a far distance someone should notice, or it is highlighting that there is a difference between them and their workers. So if you can see in this picture, workers are just loaded behind. Even if it's raining, we'll see that there is even no one who will stay near the driver, who is a white person. So I've never seen a white person buying a taxi so that he will transport his or her workers. But what he does, they buy these kinds of vans so that they will show this difference that, okay, between them and their workers, they are the superior and they are their workers are the subordinate group. So in that way, they've attached that kind of definition to race. So they look at race as something that has to do with who is better and who is not better. So how they should live their lives. So, but when we look at those places where race is not a big issue, so looking at this picture here, so you can see this is a white guy and this is a black guy, but they are traveling on a single car. So even if you can see their body language, so the black guy is just feeling relaxed, so he feels no pressure. So he feels as if the car is, he's owning the car too. So there is not that major difference in a way that someone is noticing that, okay, this is probably the owner of the car and this is just someone who's just picked from somewhere. So again, this issue of symbolic interactions, it goes further to schooling again. So just because learners are from our societies and are from different societies too. So in schooling, they come with different ideas, and to symbols again, they attach different meanings. So even on race, they will have different meanings on race. So as a result, you will find that learners, one learner maybe, is becoming racist, then the other is not becoming racist. So as a result, it means it is again something that we need to fix. So how can we then ensure that in our schools the system is just and there is not this issue of misconceptions on race that leads on schooling being difficult? So as a result, we need to firstly touch the issue of meaning. So since learners, they attach meaning to race, and if those meanings are false, which means they will act on false meaning. So as a result, there should be an assurance that the meaning learners they attach on race is relevant and to ensure a just society, and how that would be possible. So learners in these days are much on televisions. So our televisions, at least they could have shows that keeps on emphasizing that race is not just something that has to do with how we should live our lives and what qualities, what do we have and what do I don't have. So race, they should emphasize it as just meaning that we have a different ancestor. So that's what race means differently. But it has nothing to do with how our lives should be and how someone should treat us. So if learners can come in schools with a true definition of race that is fair, also even teachers, if themselves they can have that definition that race is not something that puts one in a better position and one in a subordinate position, but it's something that has to do with our ancestors and where are we coming from, definitely. So in that way, at least our society could be just. Thank you.
My name is Utsumbumbos, and I have been given a very simple task of explaining that what does functionalism means when it comes to race. Functionalism addresses society as a whole in terms of the functions of its constituent elements that are namely norms, customs, traditions, and institutions. Functionalist framework generally stressed the unifying role of culture and particularly values in regulating and resolving conflicts. From this perspective, societies are seen as coherent, bounded, and fundamentally rational constructs that function like organisms with their various parts, such as race, working together in an unconscious way towards achieving an overall social equilibrium. Given this emphasis on equilibrium and harmony, the functionalist perspective easily allows for specific microanalysis of more contentious power imbalances such as race-related issues. It also allows for the microanalysis that much of modern sociology is oriented around, such as identity formation and social constructed nature of race. It is less well adapted to understand individual discrimination because it ignores the inequalities that cause tension and race. So in other words, functional theorist takes the view that, or stands in the view that societies or race, different racial groups need to work together in order to achieve one common
I
goal.
think what Musomutu has stated, the functionalist perspective on race stresses that everything or every person in a society should function or should play a certain function in order to maintain stability and the status quo of the society. As you can see here, different people of different races are working together or cooperating in order to maintain or to achieve a certain goal in the society. What Voski has stated, a functionalist perspective on race stresses that every person or everything in the society should function or should play a certain function in order to maintain the status quo and stability in the society. As you can see, functionalist perspective on race, every person here or different people from different races are playing or are working together in order to achieve a certain goal in the society. Therefore, when it comes to race, functionalists may look at how racial categories or racial typologies have certain function to the stability of the society. They might also look at the dysfunctions and malfunctions caused by inequalities. Thus, functions of racial categories have been deeply criticized for justifying racial inequalities, racial differences, and racial segregation as being essential functions to the society. Or functionalist perspective to the concept of race can be applied by discussing the way racism can contribute positively to functioning of the society by strengthening bonds between in-groups members through ostracism, excluding or of out-group members, or without allowing different colors, different races to enter your group. In other words, we can consider how a community might increase solidarity or unity by refusing to allow outsiders or strangers access. Thus, this idea has also been widely disapproved for justifying racism and inequality. According to Nash 1964, racism and discrimination may be functional, but for a certain group only. For example, suggesting that racism is morally justifies a racial inequality in unequal society by considering the case of slavery of black people, in which slave owners suggested that blacks were inferior to whites and preferred slavery instead of
classroom context. How we could link functionalism to the classroom. Functionalism is an anti-racism theory. Talking about functionalism works towards creating a society where everybody is equal. Looking at this picture, you see white learners and African learners, colored learners, Indian learners playing together sports. This emphasizes that equality in between learners should occur. Moreover, if learners go to school and then they interact together in a diverse environment, racism will not be passed in that particular context. Each learner will be able to understand that racism is not something that you could live with. Looking at this picture, we see an arrow going to a private school and a public school, meaning private schools, there's a theory that private school education is more privileged or is more quality than public schools. But if this functionalist theory could break this segregation and put together these schools and be a modified texture in terms of one, there mustn't be this private school and public school. It could cause a way that segregation between race would be stopped. In terms of race, we have African, black, colored, Indian, and whites. But this functionalist theory breaks this barrier and goes against this segregation between the races. Meaning, functionalism works towards creating an equilibrium, as my colleague has said. That equilibrium will form a way that will help each and every individual be equal.
Thank you for taking the time to participate in this presentation. One knows that you could have resisted coming to this presentation, but you managed to come. Just to sum up what has been articulated by our group, it stands with no objection that these different theories could be used to create a socially just classroom in such a way that promote racial equality within any community and specifically